So, welcome to the ruined city of OSGILIATH, and for something a little different, this is the river crossing variant of the OSGILIATH map, and in this situation the defenders are not expected to win, they are just expected to hold out for as long as possible. And I didn't set a time limit on this map because, well, I don't really like time limits as such, because it does blue balls you rather when the battle ends because the time is up, and I did want this to go the distance regardless of whether or not we were deemed to have won the moral victory or not. So we'll say that if the battle is under 45 minutes, that the attackers have won absolute victory. If it's over an hour, then the rear guard was successful, and if it's in between, then it's sort of middling. No one really comes away with a total victory, shall we say. And it was hard to know. I don't actually know who won this battle in terms of those time limits, because there was quite a lot of lag in this fight, so it certainly went over an hour with the lag, but without it I fear it may be close to total loss for us. We'll see. We'll see. I think that it's going to be sort of between 45 minutes and an hour, this one. That's my prediction anyway. Now, of course, this is kind of a themed map, actually. The last two I've done haven't been, but this is. So we have Rohan, played by Master Blaster, and Gondor, played by myself, on mounting this rather hopeless defence. So let's go through Rohan's army first of all. We have some Helmingast. There are a couple of units of them hanging around. They're pretty good. Not really because of their arrow damage, but because once they get into melee, they are armor piercing. So that's actually a pretty good thing, especially seeing as we're facing two pretty heavily armored evil factions. And to back that up, we also have Riddermark Axemen. Now, Riddermark Axemen, not very durable, but still capable of doing quite a lot of damage. Better than the lowest tier of shock units that the Orcs can bring, for example. But maybe not quite as cost effective as they used to be back in the old days of vanilla Third Age, but they're still pretty good. You know, Rohan don't have much, well, many other options, shall we say. Also some dismounted Aerid Lancers. Pretty good as far as, well, sort of spear units goes. I'm not sure how these guys are classified in Reforged, to be honest with you. I know that in standard Third Age they were classed as just heavy infantry, and here it says they're classed as spearmen, so I assume they have been changed properly. So it used to be that in Third Age you would think that these guys would be good against Cav, but they weren't, and they would get slaughtered off a charge. More Riddermark Axemen hanging around, quite a lot of them. More Helmingast. There's a catapult, of course. Everyone gets one siege. So, you know, we're going to have to... And one thing to note about this map is this is one that WK has not touched up, because the buildings and the wall, even on the river crossing variant of the map, you can shoot through with projectiles. Now, this will go in favour of us and against us, but certainly more against us, because we're up against three armies, of course. I could have made this a 4v2, but the nature of this map with the see-through buildings and the skirmishes meant I think a 3v2 would be better. Otherwise, we would have just got slaughtered if it was a 4v2, and no one wants to see that. Back here, we've got all of Rohan's most elite stuff, so obviously Marshals of the Red, very, very good shock unit, very tough. Dismounted Royal Guard, more Helmingast. There's a cavalry unit just in case they break through our lines. More Marshals of the Red and some Helm Hammers back here. So let's go through my army. Of course, I will leave links to the Reforged Discord and the mod DB in the description below, and also there will be a timestamp for when the battle actually begins. So I've got a couple of units of Pelagear Marines. There is also Shield Maidens somewhere within Rohan's ranks, because obviously Javelins are going to be very important for us to get that cost efficiency on our front line going. Wardens of the White Tower, very strong sword and shield unit. A couple of units of Veterans of OSGILIATH. You know, their strength really lies in their melee abilities, and also I had to bring them to OSGILIATH. I mean, come on, this is their city. At least what remains of their city. In addition to that, I've also got a couple of units of Guards of OSGILIATH, so I brought some Pikes. You know, they're the only Pike unit that Gondor actually have, other than the Halberds that the Fountain Guard provide. 6 units of Gondor Infantry, the core of any Gondor force. And then I've also got some Sons of Argonath, very, very strong unit. A couple of units of Lasarnak Nobles, a Trebuchet in the background over there, and some Spearmen. So it is important to note that myself and Rohan, we don't have an army just full of our elites. We have to compromise, and that's really what's gonna make this battle sort of an impossibility for us to win, shall we say. The balance of power is actually fairly close, but ultimately it's because the enemy don't have many elites, but they do have such an array of numbers that we're not going to be able to deal with them. So Rune, played by Dwayling, we have Balchoth Sapphire Bladesman, very, very strong Javelin unit. Clansmen, a lot of Clansmen in fact, so they're going to be sort of just the meat shield. But it is going to be difficult for us to deal with quite so many. You know, Clan Crossbowmen as well. A unit like this is going to be lethal on this map because the buildings do nothing to stop them, so it's much easier to get shots off with them. Several units of Flagrim, several units of Gamprim as well. I believe that's it for his army actually, in addition to this Cav and the Ballista. So he's got a lot of, pretty much actually, it's more of a classic runic army. The Banshot Sapphire Bladesman is the only new to Reforged unit that he's bringing. He's got a lot of Flag Rim and Gamp for him, as was the custom with Rune back in Vanilla. Now we move to Mordor, and the numbers of Mordor are even more extreme. Of course, we have Orc Fodder, lots of Orc Fodder. I think has he got 4 units of Orc Fodder? So he paid for one. Interesting. Mordor, Morannon, Uruks, very cost effective provided they are deployed correctly. Morannon Guard, you don't see them very often anymore, but they're still pretty cheap for what they offer. Morannon Halberds, again better than the standard Uruk Halberds. Temple Inquisitors, Numenorian Shield Guard. Mordor's still bringing quite a lot of their scary stuff. Morannon Heavy Maulers as well, they're going to be very cost effective against my units in particular with how good they are against armour. Temple Guard, Morannon Bow, so Mordor have got a pretty decent archer force, and on this map that will be key. He's also bringing the Nazgul and the Olag Kai, so in the past 2 battles I've shown, the seldom seen Nazgul have made 2 appearances. It's very interesting indeed, and now we shall scoot on over across the map, hold on, there we go, to Isengard, and this is another pretty good faction to bring because their armour is going to be pretty difficult for my army in particular to deal with. Lots of clansmen, of course, you know, to be the ones taking the casualties. Nazkai Bodyguard, there is a lot of, they are blobbed up pretty hard, so it's going to be difficult for me to say what they've actually brought. They've got Uruk-hai Pikemen, Uruk-hai Infantry, they've got a catapult as well. Let me see, I think that's pretty much it. They've also got a couple of units of Berserkers, Trolls of the White Hand. You know, classic Uruk-hai army really now. So, we shall begin and we shall see. So, I will attempt to time the battle, at least according to my clock in where I'm at, so we'll see. And the plan here is obviously on this map, if you're going to defend it as well as you can, if you're playing to win, really the thing to do would be to just blob here around this gate, and that would be the whole battle. But we're obviously not going to do that. I am going to move forward my troops. We're going to try and defend the riverbank first, then we'll fall back to the gates, and then we'll fall back to the 2 choke points here. So it's going to be a battle essentially in 3 phases more or less, and we're not going to open up on them with our artillery until they are in the water over here. So for now it's a bit of a lull, and this does actually give me a bit of a chance to speak about Gondor, because obviously I do like to speak about the faction I'm playing at least in a little bit of detail. It's not going to be the full faction overviews, of course, I'm still waiting to do them, but Gondor is certainly a faction based around defence, so this is the sort of situation where they will do very well. Very much a faction based around their shielded units, you know, and armour. The Gondor infantry basically personifies what Gondor are all about. There is a case for saying that they are second only to the dwarves in such things, but, you know, the elves are probably better than them at doing that, but it is in a different way. So, of the human factions, Gondor is certainly the most defensive in nature. You know, even Dale, I would say, are not quite as defensive as Gondor, because Dale do have several units of very high tier aggressive units, whereas Gondor, even their aggressive units tend to be more focused around their armour and survivability, if I'm honest. The Sons of Argonath are a good example of that. Certainly based more around their defence than a lot of other two-hander sword units. You can see just the Gondor infantry pouring forward. Gondor archers as well. Trebuchet not opening fire yet. But yeah, and speaking of which, I think now is a good time to do a bit of housekeeping, because I am going to do a separate video for all of that. The next video I release after this one is likely to be one where I just sort of try and organise things and try and announce what I'm going to be doing going forward a little bit, mainly because it has come to my attention that my channel, and in particular the Total War playlist that I've got, has gotten rather clogged and rather bloated, so I'm going to need to do something about that, and I will announce what I'm going to be doing with that in a separate video. So I'm going to be announcing sort of things like faction overviews and unit overviews and top 10s and all that. I'm going to be organising them so that everyone knows in a separate video. I'm also going to be talking about how I'm going to be doing it with regards to organisation, because obviously as it has been, I've just been making videos and putting them on the same playlist. But I do think the time where I've been able to do that is coming to an end now, to be honest. So yeah, we will be... I'll be talking about that in a separate video though, because it does deserve its own video. It doesn't deserve to be talked about as a footnote in a battle. So back to the battle itself. We have obviously Helmingast, Gondor archers. We're going to be putting up a defence on the outside of this wall, hopefully getting a lot of kills as they cross the river itself. Now they can use this bridge to sort of a more direct route to Rohan's gate, which is going to be this one. It is more linear, of course, so it does leave them more open to missile fire, but it doesn't really matter, of course, because the amount of forces that they have to bring is much, much greater than ours. The classic Gondor armour of the archers and the infantry being brought to bear. Helmingas as well, so we've got a pretty decent archer force coming out here. And I'm going to be forming a front line with Gondor infantry, of course. The classic Gondor unit. I do like the Gondor infantry quite a lot. Obviously they're very vulnerable to units that do armour piercing damage, but then that's true of every unit like this. And the Gondor infantry managed to do it. You know, they're cheap, at least relatively speaking. 550 is not a lot to put out, and then there is 6 before the cost increases. I don't think you'll ever see a Gondor army without these guys in them, to be honest with you, because overall, unless you're fighting a lot of cavalry, there's no reason to bring the spearmen over these guys. This infantry have a higher defense bonus, of course. The spearmen are better in terms of their mass, I believe, in melee. So they are more difficult to force their way through, but even so, it's a difficult one. But I would prefer the infantry for their effectiveness in melee. The archers, now these are clansmen and orc fodder, so there is a case for saying that maybe we shouldn't be using our arrows on these, but if we can deal with these guys quickly, then this first wave will be a total waste for them, so we'll see. Also, my Gondor archers are not likely to be too effective against the higher tier units anyway, so it's not really too important. My veterans of Osgiliath slightly more with their slightly better arrow damage. Helmingas. Helmingas are actually a unit we want to get into melee as quickly as possible as well. Now that is very, very bad. The first catapult shot that my ally did cut through my line a little bit, so 188 from 203. That's a pretty decent chunk of my Gondor infantry, so I told him to stop firing. Look at this. They're just getting slaughtered as they come forward. You know, and this is kind of an interesting one, because I would have thought that maybe bringing up a couple of units of genuine quality with this would have actually made this a cost-effective push. But as it is, probably not. These clansmen are going to get thrown off very, very easily by Gondor infantry. And also, while they may well be coming in, I'm also bringing out my 2 Lasarnak nobles to give my line a bit of genuine bite, because the Gondor infantry don't have a lot of attack. There go the orc fodder routing in the face of the Riddermark axemen, or fodder advancing. Now, the Lasarnak nobles are the last unit I'm going to bring outside this gate, so this is it for my outer defence. I've brought out my 3 units of Gondor infantry, 2 Lasarnak nobles and 2 Gondor archers as the main advance begins, and Rohan, I believe, is going to bring out a couple more units. I believe he's going to bring out, or is it? No, actually I think this is going to be it. So he's got Helmingas, Riddermark axemen, and actually I think he will bring out another unit. I think he brings out a unit of Yawling axemen as well. There they are. So here's the Yawling axemen. So this is going to be it for our outer defence, and hopefully we can do a lot of damage to their lower tier units out here. Make them pay a little bit on the higher tier units as well. Flagrim are advancing, which is bad news for me. Flagrim will be very good against my Gondor infantry. These Lasarnak nobles are going to absolutely flatten clansmen in melee, and indeed they're routing. They've no taste for this battle. My Lasarnak nobles will also be good against the Flagrim. Here goes my trebuchet. Getting a kind of a glancing shot. They are kind of in loose formation. Oh, excuse me. They are kind of in loose formation, as it were, so they didn't get a hugely good shot off. The Carmel shadow bows are going to be a bit of a concern. But the trebuchet is going to be firing now. The shield wall is still holding very firm. Some of them are a little bloodied up from the clansmen, but not many. This unit of Flagrim charging in. Not a huge charge, but the Flagrim will beat the Gondor infantry in melee, of course, because of those maces and axes. Armour-piercing focus, of course. But my Lasarnak nobles are ready to flank around. He's just waiting for the enemy to commit a little bit more. Clansmen adding a little bit of meat to the bones of this attack. This is where the clansmen do actually pay for themselves very well, because they do offer a little bit of a sponge for the units around them that are slightly better, but the Lasarnak nobles should deal with them pretty quickly. If we go back over here, it's a much more choke pointy fight. These orc fodder are being very easily dealt with by Riddermark axemen and Yawling axemen, although I'm not sure what he's doing. He's kind of letting them through, which is a weird one. Very weird. Well, no matter. The main fight is over here between myself and the runic lines. As we can see, the Gondor infantry is starting to take losses pretty noticeably against Flagrim. So we're going to have to hope that the front line holds as long as possible. The Lasarnak nobles in the sides will do quite a lot of damage, though, both to the lower tier trash that we have and the Flagrim, but they are being targeted by the runic ballista, which is bad news for me. A lot of friendly fire there. Obviously friendly fire is something the enemy can actually deal with. Again, glancing shots but nothing more from my trebuchet. Bit of a shame. More damage to my lines though from the ballista. Ballista is honestly paying for itself very easily here. The Yawling Axemen are now in melee. They are decent arm-piercing units, but unlike my Gondor infantry, they are not very survivable at all. They don't really have much in the way of armour or defence, so this is going to be tricky. You see here, flag rim. The shield wall is kind of splintering a little bit, but it is still in effect. There is still clansmen here as well, so the Gondor infantry won't fall quite so quickly. Catapult is attacking those up on the bridge. The arrows are flying backwards and forwards. Gondor archers trying to get as many kills on the approaching forces as possibly can. Again, more glancing hits from the trebuchet, but nothing too concrete yet. You can see these Gondor infantry units fighting. That is a point-blank shot into something like Dunland Clansmen and Gamp Rim. So not a bad choice at all, but of course eventually this mass is going to tell. They are really making a concerted push now. Look at this. So my defence is not going to last too much longer. Again, glancing shots from the catapult, but nothing right in the middle yet. Look at this. My Gondor infantry defeat is a distinct possibility, but they are holding firm. They are eager. Look at all of this though. They are now starting to push through with mass. The Gamp Rim is here, and that is terrible by me. The trebuchet that I asked to try and attack this blob because the blob was too good to ignore has basically finished off the very middle of my lines there. So this is going to be all she wrote for the outer defence pretty soon. And obviously we are going to be falling behind in terms of the kill percentages pretty quickly with how many forces are being committed. And this is why I didn't make it a 4v2 in the end, because, you know, the mass that 4 players can bring to bear against 2 is honestly a little bit insane in a battle as good as, well, as choke pointy as this anyway. And over here we can see that my trebuchet is now being targeted by the runic ballista. The ballista, I've often said, is the anti-fun device because it is mainly used to destroy other pieces of siege equipment. The lag from this front line is real. Look at all the unit models. Look at all the arrows. The Lasarnak nobles are still in battle, but they're being cut down now as well. There simply isn't enough of them. So, looking at the percentages killed, we have killed more of them than they've killed of us. So, from that point of view, you can say that our outer defence was a success. The runic player also committed some of his better units, like the flag rim, so we were able to get some kills there. My units are actually fighting to the death as well. They're not running away, but now the time has come to... That was a pretty good hit from my trebuchet. And now with less of my units here, there's much less danger of me getting friendly fire on this blob. But we are now retreating in, and I'm setting up a defence at the gate. Both my units of Guards of Osgiliath are going to double up on this gate here. Now it is worth saying that arrows can basically hit them from every angle because this wall is see-through. You cannot get up on this wall like you can in the standard Osgiliath map. But I did want the river crossing version because it does mean that the enemy are attacking all from one area. The mighty push of evil. Some of my Lasarnak nobles are still in melee. Still getting a few kills. I do like the Lasarnak nobles. They're one of the best looking units in my opinion. Again, another glancing shot. The trebuchet is slowly paying for itself, but not with like a really nice juicy hit. Mordor are now across the bridge as well. And they are in through the gate. They don't have quite as much of a comprehensive defence as I had. The enemy are going to be able to get a bit more of a foothold over here, at least to start with. The Aerid Lancers and the Helmingas in melee will easily deal with Dunland Clansmen though, of course. And here we can see the first push through the main gate here, at least my gate, into the stakes and pikes. It's not really the most appealing advance for the enemy to try and take on. And this is probably a good idea to, well, a good point anyway, for me to talk about pikes and where I think they have a few shortcomings now. It's my opinion that I think pikes in spear wall formation like this should have a mass bonus, because it's still all too easy for them to be forced through. And this means they have no real advantages over halberds anymore, because halberds, of course, you can more easily force your way through them, just like pikes, of course, but they are armour piercing, so they at least have the attack bonus, whereas pikes, they do their killing very, very slowly. And with how the game works at the moment, with how the pikes, you know, how like mass pushes, like you saw in the outer front there with how they forced their way through eventually, That's a very, very popular way of doing things at the moment, and that means pikes, even when they're banked up on like this, being shot in the back by my ally at the moment, even when they're banked up like this, they can still be forced through by a push like this. And you know, it is right, of course, that pikes should be forced through after a certain amount of time, but I think that they should have a bit more of a bonus. I think it shouldn't be quite as easy for the enemy to force their way through a pike line as it is at the moment. I think it's, you know, there's not really a great deal of reason to use pikes in a lot of situations, you know. Maybe in the late game, but certainly on the front line, how they're meant to be used, I think they are a little bit underwhelming as it stands. But that's just my opinion. You know, maybe other people would disagree. We'll see. I'd like to hear what people think about pikes, to be honest with you. Obviously back here we have Gamp Rim. They are of course armor piercing. They count as halberds now, I believe. You know, their pikes certainly, I think they've been made to hold them higher up the shaft, as it were. So I do believe Gamp Rim are now halberds. You can see lots of catapult volleys coming in, attacking the Gamp Rim and the enemy archers. Let's go back over here. Of course, this is traditionally where pikes used to do pretty well, but eventually the mass is going to tell you can see through the wall over there. Orc heavy maulers, or big maulers, or Morannon maulers, whichever you want to call them, with their enormous oversized axes, are getting into the melee. I'm sort of trying to bulk up the mass of my 2 pike units with a unit of Gondor infantry and shield wall as well. We'll see how this goes though. Back over on the runic side of things, they've moved forward their Helmingast and their Aerid heavy lancers. Aerid heavy lancers honestly probably won't do too great against Morannon maulers. They will win, of course, because of the defensive position, but they will be bled. They'll be made to pay for it. I've also sent over a unit of Gondor spearmen over here to sort of shore up the Rohan line as well, because Rohan, of course, a little less built for defence than Gondor. But yeah, so far the rear guard action is going pretty well. We've managed to force them out, we've managed to make them pay for every inch, but now 12% is the gap still, so we are actually doing pretty well as it stands. But of course the enemy, if you look across the river, they've still got a lot of men, and they haven't really committed any of their elites yet. And they have more elites than we do, it must be said. We shall see. 45 minutes is the first target for us to try and last through. Look at the pikes. I do like pikes, like the look of them. And in vanilla Third Age, I was honestly... pikes were probably one of my favourite types of units to use, but now not so much. You know, and I do have to retract what I said about cheap pikes. It was the case before, but now I think cheap pikes are just too lightweight, too easy to force their way through. You can see a unit of Riddermark Axemen here. You can see arrows coming through the wall as well. It's a bit of a shame. Like, I do think that OSGILIATH is intended to be one of the maps that's remastered at some point, because this is honestly a problem in both variants. This wall is solid in the other variant, but that's about it. Otherwise, the houses you can shoot through. You cannot move through them, but you can shoot through them. So I do look forward to seeing what OSGILIATH is remastered like, but I do believe that the next one is intended to be either Helm's Deep or Dol Guldur, so that should be fun, because those maps were pretty damn good, even as they were, so I can't wait to see what the remastering does for them. Of course, we can see now that my Guards of OSGILIATH are under pretty sustained arrow fire, and against good archers they will fall. Of course, in the last map I did, I targeted Guards of OSGILIATH at point blank with light elven archers, and the amount of arrow damage they do leaves something to be desired, but Morannon bows, which I believe is what is targeting them now, will do a decent amount of damage to them. I have actually forced them back to the opening over here though, the archway. Look here, Morannon maulers, clansmen, there are Uruk-hai infantry and archers coming in, so they are sending what is largely trash at the moment. Still, the plan is, of course, to fall back to here eventually. And there is method in this, like I don't want to just come forward here, but this area here, this sort of, so I wouldn't call it a courtyard, but a wide street, is going to be a good place for me to use my javelins. And also my veterans of OSGILIATH are sort of here, so this I hope to turn into a bit of a killing ground. You can see the blood coming out of these Guards of OSGILIATH. They really are under a withering storm of arrow fire. If we look over here at the enemy armies, you can see them still pouring across the river. There are still a lot of them that haven't even entered the water yet. The Ballista is here, Morannon Uruks, Flag Rim. Rune have certainly committed more of their forces than the 2 Orc factions, but that's worked pretty well for them, honestly, because Rune are a pretty good faction to use against Gondor with all their armor piercing. If we look over here, more Morannon units. Are they using the bridge? Yeah, Numenorian Shadow Guard. Is that the Nazgul? No, that's still just more Shadow Guard. And Temple Inquisitors are on the bridge. Isengard are committing more and more forces. The Ballista. And now Isengard are committing their trolls, so this is when they're really starting to give more. I've also committed my Trebuchet to try and give more mass. It's not much, but against trolls like this is what trolls were born to do. And also this is one of the reasons why I think pikes are a lot less effective than they used to be. In the old version of the game, if you committed trolls into pikes, they would be eviscerated pretty quickly, but now they barely even feel that. You know, so I do think pikes need a buff of some description. My opinion, of course, but again, Riddermark Axemen are coming in. Shock Infantry is now what is good to use against trolls, so this is good, but again, we can see the arrows just coming through the walls, absolutely eviscerating our defensive position. Now, the percentages are really starting to close. Look at this, they've really just buckled my pikes when they saw they were depleted, and now we're in a great deal of trouble. I am throwing my javelins in, trying to weaken these trolls, but ultimately it would be prudent of me to fall back. Now the enemy can actually go under these archers here and try and flank around the Rohan defence, so it's really up to Rohan what they want to do, whether they want to fall back to this street or whether they want to keep manning this gate and sort of try and hold this area as well. It's going to be interesting, because if they try and hold this area as well, it means they're technically shooting or attacking my attacking army from the side. So there are benefits to both. Of course, Rohan will be a little overextended if they try and do that, but we'll see. My veterans of Osgiliath are now also shooting into this blob, getting a lot of nice kills on Uruk-hai infantry. The trolls are retreating as well because they were under javelin fire. That's a good move by the enemy. My Palagir Marines took a hammering from those archers that were shooting them as well. Riddermark Axemen charging into the sides of them. Not a bad move, honestly, because they are a little bit thin on the ground now, and they are under arrow and catapult fire. That was a good hit. So a withering array of fire coming down on them. Again, there is a bit of a weak spot in my defence over here because I only have 2 units of infantry left, so archers are being forced to sort of hold that position. 2 units of Gondor infantry forming the front line. Helmingas, right there, they need to fall back pretty quickly. You can see the veterans of Osgiliath just absolutely laying waste to Uruk-hai infantry as they advance. Gamp Rim would be a good target to go after as well. They don't have shields, and they are armour piercing, so I need to get them as weakened as possible before they make it to the front line, and they are being targeted now as they advance. This second defence with the pikes honestly wasn't too great, and it has taught me that, you know, I knew pikes weren't as good as they used to be, but I was honestly a little bit surprised at how bad they performed to the mass push, because they weren't honestly too depleted, but we'll see. Gondor archers, that unit of Uruk-hai infantry is routing. The shield wall is a little bit bulbed now, it's sort of like come out of position. Even in guard mode it tends to do this, which is kind of annoying, but even so. Shield Maidens, very important unit this is going to be for us going forward. When they use up all their javelins in melee, they make all the units around them unbreakable. Helmingas, my Palagir Marines are also not quite as good as them. Sons of Argonath ready. Let's have a look at this Rohirrim defence. So yeah, they are trying to flank around with Uruk-hai infantry, but Riddermark Axemen are there to meet them. You can see over here, I've still got a couple of Gondor spearmen forced up against the wall. They're now also committing the trolls. And to sort of shore up the line quickly, my ally did commit his Royal Guard. But yeah, the amount of trolls we're having to deal with is pretty disgusting. Truly, this is why we weren't expected to win this fight. We were outnumbered and outclassed in many ways. But the spectacle of this fight, of course, like in lore, I know that it was only Gondor here, and Isengard were not here, but even so, it's still good versus evil. Rohan arrived a little early and decided to give the Osgiliath defenders a little bit of help. The Olag-hai just so difficult to take down. The Trolls of the White Hand, I believe, are a little bit more lethal in melee, but the survivability of the Olag-hai means I still prefer the Olag-hai, honestly. So if we look back over here, Rune really starting to commit more. The Flag Rim and the Gamp Rim are going to be very good against my Gondor infantry. However, with the arrow fire from the veterans of Osgiliath and the javelin fire from my Palagir Marines, I should manage to throw this attack off, at least for the time being. I do like the runic units. Let's see. Can these Palagir Marines get a decent volley off? Here they go. There they go. That's a good volley. Armor-piercing javelins, dealing a lot of damage to the Gamp Rim and the Flag Rim. Got Gondor archers and Gondor infantry trying desperately to hold this line. Also, I've got some support from Rohan with this sort of slightly depleted unit of Riddermark Axemen. I'm also trying to get my Sons of Argonath out of the arrow fire because like they can shoot through the wall and these buildings. It's very antagonising, but it really can't be helped. And I'm going to need those elite units to really buy me some time in the late game. You can see these dismounted Royal Guard now moving in. They should be sufficient to deal with these Olag High. Some depleted Helmingas are trying to sort of get in here and sort of hold back the flanking force. There are more Royal Guard back there. The catapult is still there. We'll see what they can do. But yeah, Rohan I think are going to decide to hold this until the bitter end, which is an interesting move. It's not a bad move because potentially we're going to split the forces that are coming from me, and honestly I took a bit more of a beating than Rohan at the gates, so perhaps this is for the best. Moran on Maulers, Gamp Rim, again, more of the same units. They haven't deployed any of their really scary stuff yet, but then they haven't needed to. Meanwhile my archers and my infantry is really starting to take a bit of a beating from those enemy skirmishers. I do like Osgiliath as a layout in terms of a map, but I do think that mechanically the walls and the buildings do need to be made solid in order for it to be a truly great map, because it does have the potential to be that. And of course there is the fixed version of the city, which I believe actually the buildings are solid in that. I could be wrong. But of course, the ruins. And now we can see one of my units of veterans of Osgiliath is out of ammo. So I am, of course, going to be committing them to melee. They are, of course, very good in melee. One of the best archers in melee. As outside of the elves, you probably couldn't find a better archer unit in melee. Now this is the unit over here that I actually did give a bit of upgraded armour to. So some of them have got sort of like mismatched sort of Gondor infantry armour, which looks pretty cool. What are they cheering for? That's very strange. Gondor archers are routing. My line is starting to thin. These Royal Guard are sort of running around like headless chickens. Pelagia Marines, I think they might be out of ammo now, so I'm just going to charge them into melee. Sort of cover up this gap that has formed. Pelagia Marines, of course, not great in melee, but they're not terrible either. They do have shields at the very least. Let's see, and now another push coming forward. Dunlanding Berserkers and Carmel Shadow Guard, so more armour piercing coming forward. That's bad news for me. If we look back over here, around on heavy maulers, Gamp Rim. Rohan have honestly stood pretty firm. They do need to commit more men though, because they're being flanked. Are they going to be able to commit more? Well, they're going to charge actually, I think, with their calves. So that's a good move. My other veterans of Osgiliath are now out of ammunition as well, so the part of my line that was looking a little bit ropey is now going to be reinforced, and the veterans of Osgiliath much better than the Gondor infantry in melee. Very good unit. I like the veterans of Osgiliath. One of my favourite Gondor units, to be honest. Again, these Carmel's Shadow Guard moving in. And I am now moving forward, I think, my Wardens of the White Tower. I think at this point I decided I would commit everything, because my line is starting to look pretty thin on the ground. All of the armour piercing that the enemy brought really did lay me a little bit low. But even so, the Wardens of the White Tower will not fall by the wayside so easily. They will beat Flag Rim, and they will easily beat Wild Berserkers and Carmel's Shadow Guard. Of course, we've got the Sons of Argonath over here, probably the most deadly unit I still have left. Certainly the most stylish as well, look at that. Yeah, I'm going to commit them as well. Charge them into the side of these Carmel's Shadow Guard. So this, for me, at this point, is pretty much everything committed. Can Minas Tirith make ready with the time we have offered them? I don't think we're going to make the 45-minute mark. It's going to be a challenge to make it that far. The battle, as it was played, lasted certainly longer than an hour, but that was because the dwelling here was lagging a lot. So, unfortunately for us, it was a bit of a laggy fight, but it was still a pretty cinematic one, I feel. And also, this is kind of the first lore-friendly-ish fight I've done in a while, so I did want to show that at least. And also the spectacle. I've also not done a battle like this before as well, where the quote-unquote victory conditions were a little bit different. So, meanwhile, the Royal Guard did actually manage to get in behind these units, so recharging. But still, this withering arrow fire is just not letting up, because of course the enemy were able to bring a lot of skirmishers. Camel, Shadow Guard, Dunlanding Berserkers. I am being reinforced as well with a unit of Royal Guard, which is nice. But how are things going for Rohan? Rohan have got their Helm Hammers ready to go in, and they've also committed their Marshals of the Red. Honestly, over here, Rohan are doing pretty damn well. Marshals of the Red are going to do very well against the Runic army and the Isengard army. Maybe not so much the Mordor army, they're a little bit less dependent on their melee. But these Temple Guard, they must have had a field day. Also, we've got Trolls of the White Hand back here still. Runic Bodyguard as well. Uruk-hai crossbows, the crossbows have really been like kryptonite to me at the moment. Bit of friendly fire from the enemy catapult, nothing too drastic. But again, misses. I've still got 8 Pelargir Marines launching their javelins. That's not too significant, but even so. The banner carriers are still there. Look at all the Pelargir Marines I lost, even though they're behind the building. Withering arrow fire. Sons of Argonath. They will be a very difficult unit for them to dislodge. The Temple Inquisitors are pretty much the only thing they have that could go one-to-one with these guys in melee, and they're not even on my front. Look at that, more friendly fire. That's exactly what we need. And here we see the Runic Bodyguard coming under quite a lot of arrow fire. Is that friendly fire? It must be, because I don't have any arrows left. Camel, shadow bows. Uruk-hai infantry, just the tide is never ending. And we are now falling rapidly behind. 20% behind. But can we hold? That's the question. Can we hold for long enough? These Royal Guard are a real godsend. They're gonna keep the line pretty strong. Meanwhile over here, the Rohan army is now starting to be enveloped. Look at that, Marshals of the Red. Mordor, Moran on Uruks. And unfortunately this is where the Cav manages to get in behind, and I'm not really the biggest fan of this. I mean, if you know that your enemy is going to lose, at least let them have a nice last stand rather than doing this. But, you know, whatever. It's the legitimate strategy. It's just not going to make you very popular, I fear. Meanwhile, if we look back over here, the Rohan army still holding. They're not going to be able to hold for much longer, though. Even the Helm Hammers and the Marshals of the Red can't overturn this. Meanwhile, the Cav, of course, charging. That wasn't really a great charge, but even so, what would you trade? What sort of victory would you trade your honour for? This is what's going on right now. Because with all the skirmish fire, it was very obvious that they were going to win. So I wasn't really too happy about this, because I did want our last stand to be a sort of mighty line battle, but unfortunately we were denied that by this unit of cavalry that was running around. So sad, but that is the reality of what we have. We also have this ballista at point blank, but I think it is out of ammo, so Wardens of the White Tower starting to take too much damage as well. Veterans of Osgiliath. Just looking at that Cav antagonises me. Okay, so we have Sons of Argonath. They're still doing a pretty good job in melee, honestly. These Royal Guard, trying to really get into the face of these Uruk-hai infantry. Try and do as much damage to them as possible. Rohan's line is not looking healthy. Especially not when we've got another full unit of Morannon Maulers. This is it. This is the bitter end, and I fear that defeat will be ours. We won't even have the moral victory. Now, of course, we have the Balchoth Bladesman. Didn't even have the common courtesy to fire his javelins at our army from the front. Instead, he must shoot them in the back, denying them their warriors' deaths. These veterans of Osgiliath still holding firm. Look at this. This is now turned into a rather tragic last stand. The Rohirrim spears still holding against these Uruk-hai infantry, but ultimately the hit points of most of our units have been expended, rather. The cavalry is still running around, being annoying. Veterans of Osgiliath, my Wardens of the White Tower are pretty much spent at this point. My general is in there somewhere. We'll try and find him in a moment, but my Sons of Argonath are trying to bog down this cavalry to prevent it from being the thing that spoils the battle. Let's see if we can find my general. He's in here somewhere. Excuse me. Let's see. Where is he? Is he over here? Is that him? No, that's a veteran of Osgiliath. Oof. There's a ton of friendly fire, but then a ton of effective fire, so that's going to be the end of these spears. There's my general. Right in the thick of it, surrounded by filthy Uruk-hai. Trying his best to just hold the line so that word can be sent to Minas Tirith to make ready. Oof. My Sons of Argonath are horribly bloodied up. They're also under Javi fire from the Sapphire Bladesmen. Let's see what Rune are doing. Well, Rune are pretty much dead at this point. They still have a few Marshals of the Red here and there in this blob. A few Royal Guard as well, I believe that is. But yeah, this is it. This is the end of days. The dark times are upon us. Sons of Argonath are still in melee. Veterans of Osgiliath are still doing well. The one that I upgraded the armour of. They won't go down without a fight. Pulling out the shields in melee for them is really key. Obviously the elves, their archiness is slightly better because they deal much more damage. There goes my general. Finally slain by Uruk-hai. But yes, outside the elves I don't think you could find an archer unit that is better in melee. The Blacklock Engineers and the Khazad-dûm Reclaimers, but then they're not archers, they're crossbows and axe throwers. I'm trying to think if there is one. Perhaps you could call the Dunedain Troll Slayers that as well. Maybe the Dale Dragon Slayers. But even so, I think defensively, the Veterans of Osgiliath fit so perfectly into Gondor as a faction. But this is going to be the end of them. As they are slaughtered. Still the cavalry is in position. I think there might actually be some Sons of Argonath around here. Yes, there are. There's one Son of Argonath left. How long can he last? Not long at all. Butchered by Uruk-hai. They will taste man flesh this day. Still these Sapphire Bladesmen, I'm surprised they haven't been committed yet because their swords have been pulled out. And now it's a backs to the walls job against these veterans. Are the Sapphire Bladesmen going to commit themselves? I'm pretty sure they do, if I remember correctly, but at the moment they're just sort of stood there. They're a very good unit. Not as good as the Dragon's Wrath crossbows, I think, but still very, very effective at what they do. We have these three Veterans of Osgiliath. There goes the enemy general, at the hands of Nazgul and Gamp Rim. And that means the end of Rohan. And I only have one soldier left as well. Defeat does seem almost certain. This one brave soul buying as much time as possible. But ultimately it's not going to be enough. We have failed in our mission to try and last 45 minutes. And that means, of course, that the enemy will have the advantage going on to Minas Tirith. And I do plan on doing Minas Tirith as the next battle replay, at least that's my hope. So that's what's hopefully coming up next. Although I might be on the attacking side, I might be on the defending side for that, I don't know. It really does depend on what people want. But yes, as far as other things go outside of replays, I will be going into a little bit more detail on that in a little separate video that I'm going to release after this one. So again, it's going to be interesting. You know, I think that I do need to organise things a little bit better, and I do need to do a bit of housekeeping with regards to what I've done already. So yeah, I'll announce what I'm going to do with that with regards to the next video. And you know, obviously in the description below, feel free to join the Discord, because you know, battles are becoming a lot more easy to organise with the Discord in effect. And of course the mod DB. If you just want to try out the mod, you don't have to join the Discord as such, but if you want to play, want to become part of the action, get the mod. It's fun. It's a lot of fun. And yeah, I hope to see you for the next video, which again will be sort of an information video. And then after that, hopefully I'll do a battle on Minas Tirith, maybe a few other things as well. So I hope to see you for that. Meanwhile, let's have a look and see what we did. Obviously, Veterans of Osgiliath doing very well. Wardens of the White Tower kind of hacked apart by arrow fire. A lot of our units were hacked apart by arrow fire, really. But again, Lasarnak Nobles did very well. Sons of Argonath not so well because they were really singled out, and rightly so. They're very dangerous. But yeah, that's it. That is the rear guard of Osgiliath, which the attackers were able to soundly win. We were not able to hold out for long enough. So I hope to see you for the battle that we do at Minas Tirith, which will hopefully be next.